Hello everyone. So 2 weeks ago, I was talking about how polyglot YouTube can be sometimes clickbaity and performative, and I thought this week it would be interesting to give you a concrete example by dissecting a video that illustrates exactly what I meant. And that's why this week we are doing a reaction video. But I didn't want this to be a simple reaction video where I just react emotionally. Instead, I wanted to take a more objective approach. As you can imagine, quite a bit of work went into this video, so if you end up enjoying it, who knows, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a like, and why not subscribe? Come on, I'm sure you subscribe to worse things. Ugh. I wish I knew how to wink right now, that would really help the joke. Now, onto the video. For a bit of context, the creator we're looking at today is called Mikel, Hyperpolyglot. In his YouTube bio, he says he developed a highly efficient language learning system in the Innovation Center of the University of Deusto in San Sebastian. I actually went to San Sebastian once. I loved it. At first glance, that wording makes it sound like he might have been doing academic research there, but from what I could find, Mikel doesn't seem to have held a research position at that university. So it seems that the university's Innovation Center helped support his project, but that's not the same thing as working at the university as a researcher, at least from what I could find online, so please don't sue me for defamation. Thanks. He recently uploaded a video titled How to Learn Words Fast and Not Forget in Any Language. In this video, Mikel claims that you can learn 10,000 words in just 30 days in any language. Yeah. Now, a claim like learning 10,000 words in 30 days is definitely going to raise some eyebrows. So let's dive into the video and I'll pause at a few moments to break down what's being said.
You can learn 10,000 words in 30 days in any language. And in this video, I'm going to show you how.
The first thing that jumps out is obviously the number, 10,000. Let's put that into perspective. If you spread 10,000 words over a 30-day month, that's about 333 words per day. I mean, that's a pretty high number. And there's another important question here. What does it actually mean to learn a word? Because that can mean a lot of different things. For example, does it mean you can recognize the word when you read it? Does it mean you can understand it when someone says it out loud? Does it mean you can actually use the word yourself in a sentence with the right grammar and in the right context? Can you actually write it? In linguistics research, defining your key terms is very important, otherwise everyone's confused. If you're going to make a claim about learning 10,000 words, you need to be clear about what counts as a word and what learning actually means. Otherwise, the number itself doesn't tell us much. Unfortunately, Mikel doesn't define either clearly in this video, although is a little bit clearer about what he counts as a word.
Spoiler alert, you don't need flashcards. 10,000 words. That's a big number, right? When people hear this, they have two types of responses. There are the people who immediately think that's impossible. They immediately start looking for reasons why that would never work. And of course, it never works for them because if your first reaction to a goal is to come up with reasons why it would never work, then of course you'll never make it.
Alright, so according to this logic, if you hear 10,000 words in 30 days and think, that sounds a bit unlikely, congratulations, you've already failed the mindset test. Jokes aside, this is a pretty common trick in self-help style content. If you question the claim, the problem isn't the claim, it's your mindset. It's almost a bit gaslighty. If anything, skepticism is always a good thing to have. And honestly, when someone asks you to stop questioning the claim, that's when you should question it more. Just don't take it all the way to flat earth territory, please. I need to stop with my flat earth jokes.
And then there's the second group of people. The people who, instead of immediately rejecting the idea and coming up with reasons why it wouldn't work, start thinking of ways to actually make it happen. Those are the winners. When they give you a big goal, your reaction shouldn't be, that's impossible. It should be, how can I make it happen? How can I actually do it?
It's kind of giving, if I say jump, you should say how high. So now we get what I would call a bit of a false dichotomy, which is when a situation is presented as if there are only two possible reactions. In this case, you either hear the claim and say, that's impossible, or you say, how can I make this happen? And apparently that makes you one of the winners? But reality is usually a bit more nuanced than that. You can 100% be curious about a claim and still question whether it's realistic at the same time. Also, it's worth noting that learning 10,000 words isn't really the problem. The problem is the timeline.
And if you think about it long enough, and if you do enough research, you will eventually find a way to make it happen. Luckily for you, I already did that, so I'm going to save you hundreds of hours of experimenting and research.
How kind of him. So now we get to the part where research is mentioned, which is great because if you've been following my channel, you know I'm a big fan of research. The only tiny problem is that we are told the research exists, but we're not actually shown any of it. I did leave a comment under Mikael's video, but I haven't gotten a response yet. I can only assume he hasn't seen it, so that's fine, I guess. But yeah, you can't really tell people there's research out there and at the same time not show them where to find it. That's not how it works. Although I kind of wish, because that would have made my master's dissertation way easier to write. Anyway, out of curiosity, I did try to find research estimating the maximum number of words adults can learn per day in a second language, and honestly, I couldn't find any studies that frame the question that way. I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all, I just couldn't find it. But to be fair, researchers don't really talk about vocab learning in terms of daily quotas, usually. But the closest thing I found was research on children learning their native language, where some estimates suggest a few new words per day on average over long periods of time. I think it was between 2 to 9 per day. I will obviously put my research in the description box below. But anyway, that research is for children learning their first language over years, so it's not really comparable. And more generally, linguistics research usually isn't about finding the absolute maximum someone could theoretically achieve. It's mostly about understanding how language learning tends to happen and what factors influence it. Usually, I said. Chasing extreme numbers is a bit more of a YouTube thing.
I'll show you exactly, step by step, how to learn 10,000 words in 30 days. Let's get started. And the first thing you need to know is that words are much easier to learn if you learn them in context. So you shouldn't learn words in isolation, always in context, always in example sentences. This way you will also learn the grammar as well without studying the rules. If you learn enough sentences, you learn all the grammar. And words will be much easier to remember.
Alright, so here he explains learning vocabulary through example sentences, and to be fair, that's pretty much consensus in linguistics. Seeing words in context helps you understand how they're actually used, so I'm good with that. But regarding the grammar claim, I'll address this a little bit later in the video.
So rule number 1 is always learn the words in context, inside example sentences, always. The second thing you need to know is that you don't actually need to learn 10,000 words. It depends on the language, but a percentage of the vocabulary in the language will be related to the languages you already speak. If the language you're learning is very different from the ones you already speak, then of course you'll have to learn a lot more words. But if the language you're learning is a European language and you already speak English, chances are 20, 30, 40%, in some cases 50% or more of the vocabulary in the language will be the same or similar to the vocabulary you already know. So you'll be able to recognize those words in context. So you can see that we're already reducing that number from 10,000 to 8,000 or 5,000 or even less in some cases.
In this section, he brings up something that is actually true. If you already speak a related language, you'll recognize a lot of similar vocabulary. For example, if you speak English and you start learning French, Spanish, or Italian, many words will look familiar. Linguists call these cognates. That being said, recognizing a word isn't quite the same thing as knowing it. Sometimes the meaning is slightly different, usually the pronunciation changes, and sadly you get what are called false friends. So yes, related languages can definitely give you a head start, but it doesn't automatically mean those words are fully learned. Otherwise, every Spanish learner would already speak perfect Italian after one holiday in Rome. So I would say his math was a bit aspirational because going from 10k to 5k words is a pretty big jump. Unless vocabulary was on a 50% sale, I don't know. And by the way, the grammar claim lives in the same optimistic universe. Sentences absolutely help you notice grammar patterns, but they don't magically unlock the whole grammar.
And it gets even better, because if you use word families, instead of one word at a time, you can learn 5 or 10 or even more. And of course, this will speed up the process massively. If you add a 0 to the number of words you're learning per day, suddenly you realize that you're able to learn way faster than you ever thought possible. So what exactly are word families? A word family is a group of words that are related to each other. For example, to work is a word, but worked, working, workout, workaholic, workplace, and many other words belong to the same family. So if you learn the word work in the language that you are learning, you will also learn all those words if you do it right.
Alright, so here it talks about the idea of word families, and that's actually a real concept in linguistics. A word family usually refers to a base word and its related forms, like he said, so work, worked, working, worker, workplace, things like that. The only thing I'd say is that it kind of stretched the idea a little bit. For instance, work and workout don't necessarily share the same meaning, so they're not always counted the same way. But I'm kind of nitpicking, to be fair. But more importantly, even if word families help you learn related vocabulary faster, they don't magically multiply the number of words you learn by, 10. Because each of those words still has its own meaning, its own usage, and sometimes its own grammar. So you still have some learning to do if you want to master them. They don't just come as a bundle.
If you take that word and get a list of all the related words and put them all in example sentences, and you can do this easily with AI, now you have a list of sentences that it's very, very easy to learn, and you'll be able to learn 10 or 20 new words very quickly as a group. You memorize the root word with a mnemonic association, and the rest are very easy to learn in context. And you can also review them easily by simply listening to those sentences with text-to-speech software. And if you then test yourself with active recall, right after looking at the sentences and understanding them, you test your knowledge of them, you will remember most of them very easily long term.
What he's explaining now is that if you learn the root word and generate sentences with its related words, you can learn the whole group very quickly. And again, parts of this make sense. Using sentences, reviewing them with audio, even generating examples with AI, those are all perfectly reasonable learning strategies. That being said, just because words share the same root doesn't mean they become instantly easy to learn. As I already said, each word still has its own meaning and usage. And if you try to learn too many similar words at once, you can actually end up mixing them up. And at that point, you're not learning faster, you're just confusing yourself more efficiently.
You will remember most of them very easily long term, especially if you also review them with spaced repetition, which is really, really easy to do without flashcards by simply listening to the audio files of these sentences. You create audio files of those sentences, a sentence per word that you're learning, grouped in word families, so they all sound similar and they are related to each other, they're easy to recognize, and you listen to them over and over while you do something else. This way you can review thousands and thousands of sentences every day, thousands of words. And because they are related to each other, they're very, very easy to recognize. If you like flashcards, you can use them, it's fine, but it's a very slow way to learn compared to this. This is the best way to learn, all right?
The last sentence is kind of giving, just trust me, bro, it's the best method. Anyway, before diving into this last part, there's something a little bit confusing to point out. At the beginning of the video, his method is presented as an alternative to flashcards. But the techniques being described here, i.e. active recall and spaced repetition, are actually the same principles flashcard systems are built on. The only real difference is the format, so I don't quite get the opposition to flashcards here. If anything, with things like Anki, you can review sentences with audio very conveniently. So that said, the basic idea it mentions here, testing yourself and revisiting the material over time, does actually help with retention. After all, those are well-established learning techniques. Where things get a bit questionable, I would say, is the idea that you can review thousands of words simply by listening to sentences in the background while doing something else. Let's be honest, if it were that easy, we would all become fluent just by leaving podcasts running in the background all day. So again, I think he's being a bit too optimistic here. So that's all the commentary I had on this video. For me, the main takeaway is that it's important to stay critical of claims being made online in the language learning space. It's very easy to watch a video by someone who seems to have authority and great charisma and just take everything they say at face value. But also, I get it. I mean, Mikkel is definitely very easy on the eyes. As a C2 level gay, I feel professionally qualified to make that observation. But jokes aside, I think it becomes even more important to stay critical when people promote extremely ambitious goals and frame skepticism almost as a character flaw. At one point, he even contrasts people who question the claim with the winners, which, you know, sends a bit of a message. Anyway, if you made it all the way to the end, comment with the gayest emojis you can think of. Let's make this comment section fabulous, queens. All right, I will see you next week. Bye-bye. I am done. I'm sweating tits off. Fucking hell. Imagine I put that on YouTube. They don't magically teach you the entire grammar of the language. Oh, fuck off. I'm gonna sneeze. Fuck me.